For me, as people who I can advocate on their behalf, who just had a bad day and get allowed to have a bad day, and based upon the events of that day, they found themselves in an emergency department, and they're like, "Well, I don't want to have anything to do with you," and now they're on an inpatient unit and coming to court for a possible order. And when you take the time to listen, well, hey, what happened that day? And someone say, well, I got a doctor's appointment, a call from a doctor that says I need to get to the emergency department because my husband of 16 years have given me an STD. And so giving people that space, which is the same grace we want extended upon us, right? We extend it to upon everyone and just acknowledge that, okay, you had a bad day. What can we do to make it better? If you had to make another choice, what would you have done differently? And then having someone to advocate on their behalf that, hey, they had a bad day, and you know, can we count this as a one and done, a learned experience, and let them go and tell the story about what not to do. We can't just paint everybody with a broad brush. We have to allow that time for them to tell the story. And oftentimes in an inpatient setting, an emergency setting, you don't get that time. And before you know it, here you are before a judge for a probate matter. You're like, what the heck? I mean, but then on the other spectrum, I've seen people who never wanted to follow up with treatment, and now they're placed on this order, and they were receiving their services from one CMH provider where they didn't feel heard, didn't feel that they had their best interest at hand, giving them the opportunity, which is well within their right, to switch a provider to get a fresh start, and then they do what they need to do for court adherence, and they're living their lives. And now, again, we want people to be ambassadors about recovery. And so, I talk about that a lot. And some of them are going through the peer program to become a certified peer to help navigate others. So, we have those spectrums, which can take place. But again, someone has to have that conversation to be very honest and transparent.
For me, it would be seeing familiar faces get connected to treatment and stay connected to treatment, either while on continue orders or while, maintaining on their own without an order. So I think we've had a couple of cases where people have been familiar faces not only to the court and to the CMH, but also to law enforcement. And I think those cases where all the different points of the system of care get to work together and really uphold their end of things, the way that we ideally see this working. When that actually happens, and it never happens like the first time, it always takes,
Mhm.
3, 4 times for that to happen. But when it does happen and somebody is actually connected and they stay connected, and it gives some relief to their loved ones, it gives relief to law enforcement, who keep encountering these individuals in very, very dire straits. I think those are my best, the feel good stories, if you will, the ones that really make it feel like we're doing something, is when we engage all of our partners too, because it gets the buy-in from our partners to know that this can work. If we all hold up our weight in our end of things, we can create a system of care that actually works for individuals who we encounter. Sojourner and I talk about this all the time. It's not a magic wand. That's my favorite phrase when it comes to AOT. Is it's not a magic wand. It's a wonderful tool when it is appropriate. I think that because we are in a place where um, we have gotten routine, if you will, with making recommendations and just doing things that we've always done. A lot of people that are placed on AOT are not appropriate for AOT. They may be appropriate for some other treatment modality or something else, and we waste a lot of time trying to get them acclimated on an order, whereas they may not be appropriate. So I think that what I want people to know is that it's not appropriate for everyone. It is a great tool for those that it's great for. But the expectation should not be that it's going to be a cure-all, even for the individuals who it does work for. it has to be appropriate for that person. That person has to be willing to do it. And you have to understand that it's going to take time to get that person restored or back to a resemblance of how they used to be. So that's what I would say.
For me, ALT is a process. And so we have to help the clinicians and we have to help our member base navigate that process. And they get to determine that outcome. We may assist them with, setting up goals, but at the end of the day, they walk this journey. And it's much better if they can walk it alongside someone who has their best interests at hand, who, will remind them and encourage them that, we tried it that way before. This is what happened. How can we spin it to do something different? And just again, have those conversations. I just think that you know, life is hard, and we can't forget that, and we have a duty to put our best foot forward. And if we can't do that, then we shouldn't harm them anymore. We shouldn't, treat them, like they're less than in terms of, the whole snitching piece on them because they won't do what the clinical team want them to do, how they want to do them. It is a slippery slope, especially with coming out of the pandemic, the economy, all of this stuff. And so people are really, really struggling. And so we have an opportunity to add some additional supports to them and to assist them to be the best versions of themselves.
I think that AOT programs can play a huge role as we develop throughout the state by bringing together all of our mental health stakeholders. So, bringing together all of our partners um, and getting us communicating, not operating in those silos. So, I think that is one way that we can use AOT, but also to provide respite for loved ones and supports, giving them an opportunity or a space to know that they have a mechanism by which to get the individual treated, and have confidence in that process or that program, knowing that they have a system of care that they can rely on, doing things different than what we've been used to before. And lastly, just instilling a sense of confidence also in the person who has an order, that someone actually cares about their well-being, and that's the reason that they're on the order, not doing things as we've always done them, but working to do things differently to holistically treat people who have mental illness.